What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is April 1st, 2026, about 6:15 p.m. where I'm at right now. And we are finishing our 20th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 17 of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Now, this is not the last episode because we still have the epilogue to read. I might read the epilogue today in a separate episode, or we might save it for tomorrow. It's only a few pages. Who knows how I'll feel. But we are reading the last two chapters of the main story of Invisible Man. Today we will be reading chapters 24 and 25, where our main character is now in a precarious situation. He was on the verge of getting kicked out of this leftist group called the Brotherhood, which is a fill-in for the Communist Party of the United States of America. And now he is saying that he has reached full realization. Instead of trying to push the organization to try to fight for black rights, he has admitted and accepted that this organization only wants to use and abuse people like him for the sake of some greater goal. He said it in his monologue yesterday, essentially, that people just wanted to use me for their own benefit and not see me for who I truly am. And instead of fighting against it, he just is going to follow his grandfather's advice. Yes 'em to death. Yes 'em to death. Just say yes, 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 until what they wanted to avoid will explode in their face. Because the inevitable will happen. The inevitable will happen, regardless of how some people try to dictate history to their own terms, right? So we are going to be finding out what happens to our main character now that he is, at this crossroads in his career. Let's see what happens. I'm very excited. Once again, I've read this book before many years ago, but I forgot exactly all the details, and revisiting it as a man about to turn 36 for a book that I read back when I was about 16, I'm seeing it in new eyes, appreciating it in new ways with life experience behind me. So hopefully you find this book entertaining as well. As you see in the comments I left here, I'm sick right now, so I might be sneezing, coughing throughout the live stream. I apologize if that breaks up the flow, but hopefully you still are able to engage with it. And, just support this channel because YouTube is actively trying to take down my channel. I'm always fighting for the survival of this content. And all I do is read books, travel, and do movie reviews with my wife. That's it. All I do is read books, travel, and do movie reviews with my wife. But somehow that's dangerous on YouTube. Somehow YouTube thinks that that's worth deleting or taking down. And that's not cool. Okay? That's not cool at all. We have 2 live streams running. Anybody who gives comments will get a shout out. So shout out to everybody who will tune in now or tune in later. Without further ado, pardon? Take a shot every time I have to blow my nose. You might be tipsy by the end. Without further ado, let's jump into chapter 24. I started yesing them the next day, and it began beautifully. The community was still going apart at the seams. Crowds formed at the slightest incidents. Some windows were smashed, and several clashes erupted during the morning between bus drivers and their passengers. The papers listed similar incidents that had exploded during the night. The mirrored facade of one store on 125th Street was smashed, and I passed to see a group of boys watching their distorted images as they danced before the jagged glass. A group of adults looked on, refusing to move at the policeman's command, and muttering about Clifton. I didn't like the look of things, for all my wish to see the committee confounded. When I reached the office, members were there with reports of clashes in other parts of the district. I didn't like it at all. The violence was pointless and, helped along by Ras, was actually being directed against the community itself. Yet in spite of my sense of violated responsibility, I was pleased by the developments and went ahead with my plan. I sent out members to mingle with crowds and tried to discourage any further violence, and sent an open letter to all the press denouncing them for distorting and inflating minor incidents. Late that afternoon at headquarters, I reported that things were quieting down and that we were getting a large part of the community interested in a cleanup campaign, which would clear all backyards, areaways, and vacant lots of garbage and trash and take Harlem's mind off Clifton. It was such a barefaced maneuver that I almost lost the confidence of my invisibility, even as I stood before them. But they loved it, and when I handed in my fake list of new members, they responded with enthusiasm. They were vindicated. The program was correct. Events were progressing in their predetermined direction. History was on their side, and Harlem loved them. I sat there smiling inwardly as I listened to the remarks that followed. I could see the role which I was to play as plainly as I saw Jack's red hair. Incidents of my past, both recognized and ignored, sprang together in my mind in an ironic leap of consciousness that was like looking around a corner. I was to be a justifier. My task would be to deny the unpredictable human element of all Harlem so that they could ignore it when it in any way interfered with their plans. I was to keep ever before them the picture of a bright, passive, good-humored, receptive mass ever willing to accept their every scheme. When situations arose in which others would respond with righteous anger, I would say that we were calm and unruffled, if unreal. And if other people were confused by their maneuvering, I was to reassure them that we pierced to the truth with X-ray insight. If other groups were interested in becoming wealthy, I was to assure the brothers and the doubting members of other districts that we rejected wealth as corrupt and intrinsically degrading. If other minorities loved the country despite their grievances, I would assure the committee that we, immune to such absurdly human and mixed reactions, hated it absolutely. And greatest contradiction of all, when they denounced the American scene as corrupt and degenerate, I was to say that we, though snarled inextricably with its veins and sinews, were miraculously healthy. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Though invisible, I would be their assuring voice of denial. I'd out-Tobit Tobit. And as for that outhouse restroom, well, as I sat there, one of them was inflating my faked memberships into meanings of national significance. An illusion was creating a counter-illusion. Where would it end? Did they believe their own propaganda? It's funny how now he's sort of become Bledsoe. I wonder if the main character has now sympathy for Bledsoe and understands that Bledsoe is sort of doing the same thing. Yes, son, no son, for the white man, essentially to, control them and have his way with them. I mean, Bledsoe essentially said the same, that he says yes, yes to everything the white man says as a way of controlling him, but afterwards, I'll continue here. Afterwards, at the Chthonian, it was like old times. Jack's birthday was an occasion for champagne, and the hot dog day evening was even more volatile than usual. I felt highly confident, but here my plan went slightly wrong. Emma was quite gay and responsive, but something about her hard, handsome face warned me to lay off. I sensed that while she might willingly surrender herself in order to satisfy herself, she was far too sophisticated and skilled in intrigue to compromise her position as Jack's mistress by revealing anything important to me. So as I danced and sparred with Emma, I looked over the party for a second choice. We were thrown together at the bar. Her name was Sybil, and she was one of those who assumed that my lectures on the woman question were based upon a more intimate knowledge than the merely political, and had indicated several times a willingness to know me better. I had always pretended not to understand, for not only had my first such experience taught me to avoid such situations, but at the Chthonian she was usually slightly tipsy and wistful, just the type of misunderstood married woman whom, even if I had been interested, I would have avoided like the plague. But now her unhappiness and the fact that she was one of the big shots' wives made her a perfect choice. She was very lonely, and it went very smoothly. In the noisy birthday party, which was to be followed by a public celebration the next evening, we weren't noticed, and when she left fairly early in the evening, I saw her home. She felt neglected, and he was always busy, and when I left her, I had arranged a rendezvous at my apartment for the following evening. George, the husband, would be at the birthday celebration, and she wouldn't be missed. It was a hot, dry August night. Lightning flashed across the eastern sky, and a breathless tension was in the humid air. I had spent the afternoon preparing, leaving the office on a pretense of illness to avoid having to attend the celebration. I had neither itch nor etchings, but there was a vase of Chinese lilies in the living room, and another of American Beauty roses on the table next near the bed. And I had put in a supply of wine, whiskey, and liquor, extra ice cubes, and assortments of fruit, cheese, nuts, candy, and other delicacies from the vendome. In short, I tried to manage things as I imagined Reinhardt would have done. Okay, taking it up, putting up his pimp skills. Okay. All right. But I bungled it from the beginning. I made the drinks too strong, which she liked too well, and brought up politics, which she all but hated, too early in the evening. For all her exposure to ideology, she had no interest in politics and no idea of the schemes that occupied her husband night and day. She was more interested in the drinks, in which I had to join her glass for glass, and in little dramas which she had dreamed up around the figures of Joe Louis and Paul Robinson. And although I had neither the stature nor the temperament for either role, I was expected either to sing Old Man River and just keep rolling along, or to do fancy tricks with my muscles. I was confounded and amused, and it became quite a contest, with me trying to keep the two of us in touch with reality, and with her casting me in fantasies in which I was Brother Taboo, with whom all things are possible. Okay. He's just slinging D to pogs, and all pogs are not built the same. Some pogs want the thug brother. Some pogs want the educated brother. Some pogs want the sports brother. Some pogs want the rapper brother, the musician brother. And now he's got to be all of them. Try to get this pog to lay it on him. Anyway. Now it was late, and I came into the room with another round of drinks. She had let her down her hair and was beckoning to me with a gold hairpin in her teeth, saying, "Come to Mama, beautiful," from where she sat on the bed. "You drink, madam," I said, handing her a glass and hoping the fresh drink would discourage any new ideas. "Come on, dear," she said coyly. "I want to ask you something." "What is it?" I said. "I have to whisper it, beautiful." I sat and her lips came close to my ear, and suddenly she had drained the starch out of me. I pulled away, and there was something almost prim about the way she sat there, and yet she had just made a modest proposal that I join her in a very revolting ritual. "What was that?" I said, and she repeated it. Had life suddenly become crazy? Thuber cartoon? Has life become a Thuber cartoon? That's an old school reference. I don't know that. "Please, you'll do that for me, won't you, beautiful? You really mean it?" "Yes," she said, "yes." Okay, what did she ask? Did she ask to put it in her butt? Did she want it in her butt? He's like, "What? You nasty bitch." She's like, "Oh, oh, invisible man, put your big black cock in my butt." Oh my God. Oh, nasty. Anyway. These pogs are out of control. Anyway. There was a pristine incorruptibility about her face, now that upset me all the more, for she was neither kidding nor trying to insult me, and I could not tell if it were horror speaking to me out want of innocence or out of innocence. Okay, because there's some typos in here. And I could not tell if it were horror speaking to me out of innocence or innocence emerging unscathed from the obscene scheme of the evening. I only knew that the whole affair was a mistake. She had no information, and I decided to get her out of the apartment before I had to deal definitely with either the horror or the innocence, while I could still deal with it as a joke. What would Reinhardt do about this, I thought, and knowing, determined not to let her provoke me to silence. "But Sybil, you can see I'm not like that. You make me feel a tender, protective passion. Look, it's like an oven in here. Why don't we get dressed and go for a walk in Central Park?" "But I need it," she said, uncrossing her thighs and sitting up eagerly. "You can do it. It'll be easy for you, beautiful. Threaten to kill me if I don't give in. You know, talk rough to me, beautiful. A friend of mine said that fellow said, 'Drop your drawers.' And, okay, damn, these pogs. These pogs be hungry for cock. These pogs hungry for cock. She said, drop my drawers. Threaten to kill me. Take me. What? You nasty broad. Oh, my God. Oh, anyway. He said, what? I said. He really did, she said. I looked at her. She was blushing. Her cheeks, even her freckled bosom, were bright red. Go on, I said, as she lay back again. Then what happened? Well, he called her a filthy name, she said, hesitating coyly. She was a leathery old girl with chestnut hair of fine natural wave, which was now fanned out over the pillow. She was blushing quite deeply. Was this meant to excite me, or was it an unconscious expression of revulsion? A really filthy name, she said. Oh, he was a brute, huge, with white teeth, what they call a buck. And he said, bitch, drop your drawers. And then he did it. Wait, what? He did it. What? What? Okay. She's such a lovely girl, too. Really delicate with a complexion like strawberries and cream. You can't imagine anyone calling her a name like that. She sat up now, her elbows denting the pillow as she looked into my face. But what happened? Did they catch him? I said. Oh, of course not, beautiful. She only told 2 of us girls. She couldn't afford to let her husband hear of it. Well, it's too long a story. It's terrible, I said. Don't you think we should go? Isn't it though? She was in a state for months. Her expression flickered, became indeterminate. What is it? I said, afraid she might cry. Oh, I was just wondering how she really felt. I really do. Suddenly she looked at me mysteriously. Can I trust you with a deep secret? I sat up. Don't tell me that it was you. She smiled. Oh no, that was a dear friend of mine. But do you know what, beautiful? She said, leaning forward confidentially. I think I'm a nymphomaniac. You? No. Really? You? Couldn't be you. Nah, not the pog on my bed spread out talking about put it in my butt. Nah, couldn't be. You can't be the nymphomaniac, though. Nah, can't be you. Sometimes I have such thoughts and dreams. I never give in to them, though, but I really think I am. A woman like me has to develop an iron discipline. I laughed inwardly. She would soon be a biddy, stout, with a little double chin and a 3-ply girdle. A thin gold chain showed around a thickening ankle, and yet I was becoming aware of something warmly, infuriatingly feminine about her. I reached out, stroking her hand. Why do you have such ideas about yourself? I said, seeing her raise up and pluck at the corner of her pillow, drawing out a speckled feather and stripping it down from its shaft. Repression, she said, with great sophistication. Men have repressed us too much. We're expected to pass up too many human things. But do you know another secret? I bowed my head. You don't mind my going on, do you, beautiful? No, Sybil. Well, ever since I first heard about it, even when I was a very little girl, I've wanted it to happen to me. You mean what happened to your friend? Okay, so her fantasy is getting raped by a big black man who tells her, bitch, drop her drawers. This is what the character, Sybil, is saying. And now she's confessing it to this guy who she wants to do it to her. That's insane. That's insane, bruh. I did not expect this to happen so late in the story. Sybil. Somebody get that girl Sybil. Somebody get her. She wilding on these pages. Anyway. All right. Well, ever since I first heard about it, even when I was a very little girl, I've wanted it to happen to me. You mean what happened to your friend? Good Lord, Sybil. Did you ever tell that to anyone else? Of course not. I wouldn't have dared. Are you shocked? Some, but Sybil, why do you tell me? Oh, I know that I can trust you. I just knew you'd understand. You're not like other men. We're kind of alike. She was smiling now and reached out and pushed me gently. And I thought, here it goes again. Lie back and let me look at you against the white sheet. You're beautiful. I've always thought so. Like warm ebony against pure snow. See what you do? You make me talk poetry. Warm ebony against pure snow. Isn't that poetic? I'm the sensitive type. You mustn't make fun of me. But really you are, and I feel so free with you. You've no idea. I looked at the red imprint left by the straps of her bra, thinking, who's taking revenge on whom? But why he surprised when that's what they hear all their lives, when it's made into a great power, and they're taught to worship all types of power, with all the warnings against it. Some are bound to want to try it out for themselves. The conquerors conquered. Maybe a great number secretly want it. Maybe that's why they scream when it's farthest from possibility. That's it, she said tightly. Look at me like that, just like you want to tear me apart. I love for you to look at me like that. I laughed and touched her chin. She had me on the ropes. I felt punch drunk. I couldn't deliver, and I couldn't be angry either. I thought of lecturing her on the respect due one's bedmate in our society, but I no longer deluded myself, and I either knew the society or where I fitted into it. Besides, I thought, she thinks you're an entertainer. That's something else they're taught. Sorry. Woo! Oh, that was a nasty one. Sorry. Sorry to anybody listening for that. Okay. I raised my glass and she joined me in a drink, moving close. You will, won't you, beautiful? She said, her lips raw looking now, without makeup, pouting babyishly. So why not entertain her? Be a gentleman or whatever it is she thinks you are. What does she think you are? A domesticated rapist, obviously. An expert on the woman question. Maybe that's what you are. Housebroken, and with a convenient verbal push-button arrangement for the lady's pleasure. Well, so I had set this trap for myself. Take this, I said, shoving another glass into her hand. It'll be better after you've had a drink. More realistic. Oh yes, that'll be wonderful. She took a drink and looked up thoughtfully. I get so tired of living the way I do, beautiful. Soon I'll be old and nothing will have happened to me. Do you know what that means? George talks a lot about women's rights, but what does he know about what a woman needs? Him with his 40 minutes of brag and 10 of bustle. Oh, you have no idea what you're doing for me. Nor you for me, Sybil dear, I said, filling the glass again. At last my drinks were beginning to work. She shook her long hair out over her shoulders and crossed her knees, watching me. Her head had begun to weave. Don't drink too much, beautiful, she said. It always takes the pep out of George. Don't worry, I said. I rapes real good when I'm drunk. Oh, Lord Jesus, don't do it. Don't do it, brother. Don't do it. Don't play into this Pog's fantasies. Don't do it. She wants to be taken by some big black buck. Don't do it. Don't do it. Only nothing but trouble can come here. This is not the type of yesing that your grandfather told you to do. Don't be doing that. Anyway. Ooh. She looked startled. Ooh, then pour me another, she said, giving herself a bounce. She was as delighted as a child, holding out her glass eagerly. What's happening here, I said. A new birth of a nation? Ooh! What did you say, beautiful? Nothing. A bad joke. Forget it. He's referencing the movie A Birth of a Nation, the first major motion picture that our great president, Woodrow Wilson, displayed in the White House and said was the greatest piece of art in cinema history, which is basically the story of Reconstruction, how black people got free. And in the white supremacist mind, all we did was rape white women and eat watermelon and fried chicken. That's the movie Birth of a Nation, and that's what our protagonist is mentioning. And of course, the white main character doesn't know anything about that. I remember one time I was sitting with my brother and all his white friends, and he referenced Kunta Kinte, and his white friends didn't know who the hell Kunta Kinte was, and I felt so bad. Because how do you not know who Kunta Kinte was? One of the most, famous figures in pop culture history. You know what I mean? Didn't like 100 million Americans watch Roots during the 1970s? But I guess the whites watched it and then quickly forgot about it. Anyway, gotta blow my nose. All right. So, shout out to Racket Reckon joining the live stream. Shout out to Racket Reckon joining the live stream. Shout out to Racket Reckon. 2 reasons I'm wearing the bandana. Firstly, from Louisiana, it's our style, our fashion. We're the ones who put the white tees and the bandanas together with the backwards fitted caps, though I got the snapback on. So, repping Louisiana up in this bitch. Secondly, it looks good. I think it looks good. If you don't think it looks good, that's your opinion. But thank you for joining the live stream racket, and we are continuing Invisible Man, chapter 24. Let's go. So, all right, that's what I like about you, beautiful. You haven't told me a single one of those vulgar jokes. Come on, beautiful, she said. Pour. I poured her another and another. In fact, I poured us both quite a few. I was far away. It wasn't happening to me or to her, and I felt a certain confused pity, which I didn't wish to feel. Then she looked at me, her eyes bright behind narrowed lids, and raised up and struck me where it hurt. Come on, beat me, Daddy, you big black bruiser. What's taking you so long, she said. Hurry up. Knock me down. Don't you want me? Ooh, she ratchet. She a nasty. That's a nasty gal. Nasty gal. I was annoyed enough to slap her. She lay aggressively receptive, flushed, her navel no goblet, but a pit in an earth-quaking land, flexing taut and expansive. Then she said, come on, and I said, sure, looking around wildly and starting to pour the drink upon her, and was stopped, my emotions locked, as I saw her lipstick lying on the table and grabbed it and saying, yes, as I bent to write furiously across her belly in drunken inspiration, Sybil, you were raped by Santa Claus. Surprise. What? And paused there, trembling above her, my knees on the bed as she waited with unsteady expectancy. It was a purplish metallic shade of lipstick, and as she panted with anticipation, the letters stretched and quivered, uphill and down dale, and she was lit up like a luminescent sign. Hurry, Booful, hurry, she said. I looked at her, thinking, just wait until George sees that. If George ever gets around to seeing that, he'll read a lecture on an aspect of the woman question he's never thought about. She lay anonymous beneath my eyes until I saw her face, shaped by her emotion, which I could not fulfill. And I thought, poor Sybil, she picked a boy for a man's job and nothing was as it was supposed to be. Even the black bruiser fell down on the job. She'd lost control of her liquor now, and suddenly I bent and kissed her upon the lips. Shh, be quiet, I said. That's no way to act when you're being. And she raised her lips for more, and I kissed her again and calmed her, and she dozed off, and I decided again to end the farce. Such games were for Reinhardt, not me. I stumbled out and got a damp towel and began rubbing out the evidence of my crime. It was as tenacious as sin, and it took some time. Water wouldn't do it. Whiskey would have smelled, and finally I had to find benzene. Fortunately, she didn't arouse until I was almost finished. Do you do it, Booful? She said. Did you take me? Did you take me, big black bruiser? Okay, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yes, of course, I said. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes, but I don't seem to remember. I looked at her and wanted to laugh. She was trying to see me, but her eyes wouldn't focus, and her head kept swinging to one side. Yet she was making a real effort, and suddenly I felt lighthearted. By the way, I said, trying to do something with her hair, what's your name, lady? It's Sybil, she said indignantly, almost tearfully. Booful, you know I'm Sybil. Not when I grabbed you, I didn't. Her eyes widened and a smile wobbled across her face. That's hilarious. That's right, you couldn't, could you? You never saw me before. She was delighted. I could almost see the idea take form in her mind. That's right, I said. I leaped straight out of the wall. I overpowered you in my empty lobby. Remember? I smothered your terrified screams. And did I put up a good fight? Sybil said, like a lioness defending her young. But you were such a strong, big brute. You made me give in. I didn't want to, did I now, Booful? You forced me against my will. Sure, I said, picking up some silken piece of clothing. You brought out the beast in me. I overpowered you. But what could I do? She studied that a while, and for a second, her face worked again as though she would cry. But it was another smile that bloomed there. And wasn't I a good nymphomaniac, she said, watching me closely. Really and truly? You have no idea, I said. George had better keep an eye on you. She twisted herself from side to side with irritation. Oh, nuts. That old Georgie Porgy wouldn't know a nymphomaniac if she got right into bed with him. If he got right into bed with her. Oh, if she, yeah, because the nymphomaniac is the woman that George will be. Okay, yes, because his wife is a nymphomaniac who wants to be taken by big black. What? Oh my God, man. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm pretty sure Sybil's husband would watch too. If Sybil's husband were there, he'd be like, "Are you gonna do it, babe? Can I sit?" Continuing. All right. You're wonderful, I said. Tell me about George. Tell me about that great mastermind of social change. She steadied her gaze, frowning. Who, Georgie? She said, looking at me out of one bleary eye. Georgie's a blind mole in a hole and doesn't know a thing about it. Do you ever hear of such a thing? 15 years? Say, what are you laughing at, Boofle? Me, I said, beginning to roar. Just me. I've never seen anyone laugh like you, Boofle. It's wonderful. I was slipping her dress over her head now, and her voice came muffled through the shanting cloth. Then I had it down around her hips, and her flushed face wavered through the collar, her hair down in disorder again. Boofle, she said, blowing the word, will you do it again sometimes? I stepped away and looked at her. What? Please, pretty Boofle, please, she said with a wobbly smile. I began to laugh. Sure, I said, sure. When, Boofle, when? Any time, I said. How about every Thursday at 9? Ooh, Boofle, she said, giving me an old-fashioned hug. I've never seen anyone like you. Oh, she wildin'. She wildin'. She want the cock. She want the cock. Oh, my God. Oh. But is he going to get any information out this broad? Is he going to get any information out this broad? Because he's just running game on her. He ain't even smashed that. He ain't even smashed it. So is she going to give up any information or not? Because what are we doing here? Okay. All right. Ooh, Boofle, she said, giving me an old-fashioned hug. I've never seen anyone like you. Are you sure? I said. Really, I haven't, Boofle. Honor bright. Believe me? Sure, it's good to be seen. But we've got to go now, I said, seeing her about to sag to the bed. She pouted. I'll need a little nightcap, Boofle, she said. You've had enough, I said. Oh, Boofle, just one. Okay, just one. We had another drink, and I looked at her and felt the pity and self-disgust returning and was depressed. She looked at me gravely, her head to one side. Boofle, she said, you know what little old Sybil thinks? She thinks you're trying to get rid of her. I looked at her out of a deep emptiness and refilled her glass and mine. What had I done to her, allowed her to do? Had all of it filtered down to me, my action, the painful word formed as disconnectedly as her wobbly smile? My responsibility? All of it. I'm invisible. Here, I said, drink. You too, Boofle, she said. Yes, I said. She moved into my arms. I must have dozed. There came the tinkling of ice in a glass, the shrills of bells. I felt profoundly sad, as though winter had fallen during the hour. She lay, her chestnut hair let down, watching through heavy-lidded blue, eye-shadowed eyes. From far away, a new sound arose. Don't answer, Boofle, she said, her voice coming through suddenly, out of time with the working of her mouth. What? I said. Don't answer. Let her ring, she said, reaching her red-nailed fingers forth. I took it from her hands, understanding now. Don't, Boofle, she said. It rang again in my hand now, and for no reason at all, the words of a childhood prayer spilled through my mind like a swift water. Then, hello, I said. It was a frantic, unrecognizable voice from the district. Brother, you better get up here right away, it said. I'm ill, I said. What's wrong? There's trouble, brother, and you're the only one who can. What kind of trouble? Bad trouble, brother. They trying to. Then the harsh sound of breaking glass, distant, brittle and fine, followed by a crash, and the line went dead. Hello, I said, seeing Sybil wavering before me, her lips saying Boofle. I tried to dial now, hearing the busy signal throbbing back at me. Amen, amen, amen. And I sat there a while. Was it a trick? Did they know she was with me? I put it down. Her eyes were looking at me from out of their blue shadow. Boo. And now I stood and pulled her arm. Let's go, Sybil. They need me uptown, realizing only then that I would go. No, she said, but yes, come. She fell back upon the bed, defying me. I released her arms and looked around, my head unclear. What kind of trouble at this hour? Why should I go? She watched me, her eyes brightly awash in blue shadow. My heart felt low and deeply sad. Come back, Booful, she said. No, let's get some air, I said. Pardon, once again. And now, avoiding the red, oily nails, I gripped her wrist and pulled her up toward the door. We tottered, her lips brushing mine as we wavered there. She clung to me, and, for an instant, I to her with a feeling immeasurably sad. Then she hiccuped, and I looked vacantly back into the room. The lights caught in the amber liquid of our glasses. Booful, she said, life could be so different. But it never is, I said. She said, Booful, the fan whirred, and in a corner my briefcase, covered with specks of dust like memories, the night of the battle royal. I felt her breathing hot against me and pushed her gently away, steadying her against the doorframe, then went over as impulsively as the remembered prayer, and got the briefcase, brushing the dust against my leg and feeling the unexpected weight as I hugged it beneath my arm. Something clinked inside. She watched me still, her eyes alight as I took her arm. How are you doing, Sib? I said. Don't go, Booful, she said. Let Georgie do it. No speeches tonight. Come on, I said, taking her arm quite firmly, pulling her along as she sighed. Her wistful face turned toward me. We went down smoothly into the street. My head was still badly fuzzed from the drink, and when I looked down the huge emptiness of the dark, I felt like tears. What was happening uptown? What was happening uptown? Why should I worry over bureaucrats, blind men? I am invisible. I stared down the quiet street, feeling her stumbling beside me, humming a little tune, something fresh, naive, and carefree. Sybil, my too late, too early love. Ah, my throat throbbed. The heat of the street clung close. I looked for a taxi, but none was passing. She hummed beside me, her perfume unreal in the night. We moved into the next block and still no taxis. Her high heels unsteadily scrunched the walk. I stopped her. Poor Booful, she said. Don't know his name. I turned as though struck. What? Anonymous brute and Booful buck, she said, her mouth a bleary smile. I looked at her, skittering about on high heels, scrunch, scrunch, scrunch on the walk. Sybil, I said more to myself than to her, where will it end? Something told me to go. Ah, she laughed. In bed. Don't go up, Booful. Sibyl'll tuck you in. I shook my head. The stars were there, high, high, revolving. Then I closed my eyes and they sailed red behind my eyes. Then somewhat steadied, I took her arm. Look, Sybil, I said, stand here a minute while I go over to Fifth for a taxi. Stand right here, dear, and hold on. We tottered before an ancient-looking building, its windows dark. Huge Greek medallions showed in spots of light upon its facade, above a dark labyrinthine pattern in the stone, and I propped her against the stoop with its carved stone monster. She leaned there, her hair wild, looking at me in the streetlight smiling. Her face kept swinging to one side, her right eye desperately closed. Sure, Booful, sure, she said. I'll be right back, I said, backing away. Booful, she called, my Booful. Here, the true affection, I thought, the adoration of the boogie bear, moving away. Was she calling me beautiful or boogieful, beautiful or sublime? What either mean? I am invisible. I went on through the late street quiet, hoping that a cab would pass before I had gone all the way. Up ahead at Fifth, the lights were bright, a few cars shooting across the gaping mouth of the street, and above and beyond, the trees, great, dark, tall. What was going on, I pondered. Why call for me so late? And who? Sorry. I hurried ahead, my feet unsteady. Booful, she called behind me. Booful. I waved without looking back. Never again, no more, no more, I went on. At Fifth, a cab passed and I tried to hail it, only to hear someone's voice arise, the sound floating gaily by. I looked up the lighted avenue for another, hearing suddenly the screech of brakes and turning to see the cab stop and a white arm beckoning. The cab reversed, rolled close, settling with a bounce. I laughed. It was Sybil. I stumbled forward, came to the door. She smiled out at me, her head framed in the window, still pulling to one side, her hair waving down. Get in, Boothful, and take me to Harlem. I shook my head, feeling it heavy, and said, No, I said, I've got work to do, Sybil. You'd better go home. No, Boothful, take me with you. I turned to the driver, my hand upon the door. He was a small, dark-haired, and disapproving, a glint of red from the traffic light coloring the tip of his nose. Look, I said, take her home. I gave him the address and my last $5 bill. He took it, glumly disapproving. No, Boothful, she said. I want to go to Harlem, be with you. Good night, I said, stepping back from the curb. We were in the middle of the block and I saw them pull away. No, she said, no, Boothful, don't leave. Her face, wild-eyed and white, showed in the door. I stood there, watching him plunge swiftly and contemptuously out of sight, his tail light as red as his nose. I walked with eyes closed, seeming to float and trying to clear my head, and opened them and crossed to the park side. Along the cobbles, high above, the cars sailed round and round the drive, their headlights stabbing. All the taxis were hired, all going downtown, center of gravity. I plodded on, my head a-whirl. Then, near 110th Street, I saw her again. She was waiting beneath a street lamp, waving. I wasn't surprised. I had become fatalistic. I came up slowly, hearing her laugh. She was ahead of me and beginning to run, barefoot, loosely as in a dream, running, unsteadily but swift, and me, surprised and unable to catch up, lead-legged, seeing her ahead and calling, Sybil, Sybil, running lead-legged along the park side. All right, this bitch is crazy. This bitch is crazy. She's stalking the boy. He's trying to get her out, and she just can't leave him alone. She can't leave him alone, man. He put the fictional big black cock on her, and now she can't leave him alone, just chasing him down the street. She's like, please, please, my husband wants to watch. Ah! Come on, Boothful, she called, looking back and stumbling. Catch Sybil, Sybil, running barefoot and girdleless along the park. I ran, the briefcase heavy beneath my arm. Something told me I had to get to the office. Sybil, wait, I called. She ran, the colors of her dress flaring flame-like in the bright places of the dark. A rustling motion, legs working awkwardly beneath her, and white heels flashing. Her skirts held high. Let her go, I thought, but now she was crossing the street and running wildly only to go down at the curb and standing and going down again, with a bumped backside, completely unsteady, now that her momentum was gone. Boothful, she said as I came up. Damn Boothful, you push me? Get up, I said without anger. Get up, taking her soft arm. She stood, her arms flung wide for an embrace. No, I said, this isn't Thursday. I've got to get there. What do they plan for me, Sybil? Who, Boothful? Jack and George, Tobit and all. You ran me down, Boothful, she said. Forget them. Bunch of deadheads, unhipped, you know. We didn't make this stinking world, Boothful. Forget. I saw the taxi just in time, approaching swiftly from the corner, a double-decker bus looming 2 blocks behind. The cabbie looked over, his head out of the window, sitting high at the wheel as he made a swift U-turn and came alongside. His face was shocked, disbelieving. Come now, Sybil, I said, and no tricks. Pardon me, old man, the driver said, his voice concerned, but you're not taking her up in Harlem, are you? No, the lady's going downtown, I said. Get in, Sybil. Boothful's an old dictator, she said to the driver, who looked at me silently, as though I were mad. A game stud, he muttered, a most game stud. But she got in. Just an old dictator, Boothful. Look, I told him. Oh, shit. All right, slight intermission, spilled water on my computer. Okay, sorry for that interruption. I had an emergency. I just spilled water on my MacBook, and that would ruin everything in my life right now if my MacBook stopped working. So I had to go take care of that. But now let's pick up back in the story. Boofles, an old dictator, she said to the driver, who looked at me silently, as though I were mad. A game stud, he muttered, a most game stud. But she got in. Just an old dictator, Boofle. Look, I told him, take her straight home and don't let her get out of the cab. I don't want her running around Harlem. She's precious, a great lady. Sure, man, I don't blame you, he said. Things is popping up there. The cab was already rolling as I yelled, what's going on? They're taking the joint apart, he called above the shifting of the gears. I watched them go and made for the bus stop. This time I'll make sure, I thought, stepping out and flagging the bus and getting on. If she comes back, she'll find me gone. And I knew, stronger than ever, that I should hurry, but was still too foggy in my mind. Couldn't get myself together. I sat gripping my briefcase, my eyes closed, feeling the bus sailing swift beneath me. Soon it would turn up 7th Avenue. Sybil, forgive me, I thought. The bus rolled. But when I opened my eyes, we were turning into Riverside Drive. This, too, I accepted calmly. The whole night was out of joint. I'd had too many drinks. Time ran fluid, invisible, sad. Looking out, I could see a ship moving upstream, its running lights bright points in the night. The cool sea smell came through to me, constant and thick in the swiftly unfolding blur of anchored boats, dark water and lights pouring past. Across the river was Jersey, and I remembered my entry into Harlem. Long past, I thought, long past. I was as if drowned in the river. To my right and ahead the church spire towered high, crowned with a red light of warning, and now we were passing the hero's tomb. And I recalled a visit there. You went up the steps and inside, and you looked far below to find him, at rest, draped flags. 125th Street came quickly. I stumbled off, hearing the bus pull away as I faced the water. There was a light breeze, but now with the motion gone, the heat returned. Clinging. Far ahead in the dark, I saw the monumental bridge, ropes of lights across the dark river, and closer, high above the shoreline, the Palisades, their revolutionary agony lost in the riotous lights of roller coasters. The time is now, the sign across the river began, but with history stomping upon me with hobnailed boots, I thought with a laugh, why worry about time? I crossed the street to the drinking fountain, feeling the water cooling, going down, then dampened a handkerchief and swabbed my face, eyes. The water flashed, gurgled, sprayed. I pressed toward my face, feeling wet, cool, hearing the infant joy of fountains. Then heard the other sound. It was not the river nor the curving cars that flashed through the dark, but pitched like a distant crowd or a swift river at flood tide. I moved forward, found the steps, and started down. Below the bridge lay the hard stone river of the street, and for a second I looked at the waves of cobblestones as though I expected water, as though the fountain above had drawn from them. Still, I would enter and go across to Harlem. Below the steps the trolley rails gleamed steely. I hurried, the sound drawing closer, myriad-voiced humming, unfolding me, numbing the air as I started beneath the ramp. It came, a twitter, a coo, a subdued roar that seemed trying to tell me something, give me some message. I stopped. Looking around me, the girders marched off rhythmically into the dark. Over the cobblestones, the red lights shone. Then I was beneath the bridge, and it was as though they had been waiting for me, and no one but me, dedicated and set aside for me, for an eternity. And I looked above toward the sound, my mind forming an image of wings, as something struck my face and streaked, and I could smell the foul air now, and see the encrusted barrage, feeling it streak my jacket, and raising my briefcase above my head, and running, hearing it splattering around, falling like rain. I ran the gantlet, thinking even the birds, even the pigeons, and the sparrows, and the goddamn gulls. I ran blindly, boiling with outrage and despair and harsh laughter. Running from the birds to what? I didn't know. I ran. Why was I here at all? I ran through the night, ran within myself. Ran. And that's the end of chapter 24. Looks like there's a riot. Looks like it's going down. So he gave Sybil some fictionary BBC, and he's running through Central Park trying to get this bitch into a cab. He finally makes it to Harlem, and Harlem looks like it's on fire. He gets hit with shit as soon as he makes it down there. He hears the sounds of madness happening. It looks like there's something going down in Harlem. Once again, apologies to anybody listening and hearing me blow my nose. Maybe that humanizes me a bit, or maybe it just annoys you. I don't know. Anyway, this is the final chapter of Invisible Man, right here. When I reached Morningside, the shooting sounded like a distant celebration of the 4th of July, and I hurried forward. At St. Nicholas, the street lights were out. A thunderous sound arose, and I saw 4 men running toward me, pushing something that jarred the walk. It was a safe. "Say," I began, "get the hell out of the way." I leaped aside into the street, and there was a sudden and brilliant suspension of time, like the interval between the last axe stroke and the felling of a tall tree, in which there had been a loud noise followed by a loud silence. Then I was aware of figures crouching in doorways and along the curb. Then time burst, and I was down in the street, conscious but unable to rise, struggling against the street and seeing the flashes as the guns went off back at the corner of the avenue, aware to my left of the men still speeding the rumbling safe along the walk as back up the street. Behind me, 2 policemen, almost invisible in black shirts, thrust flaming pistols before them. One of the safe rollers pitched forward, and farther away, past the corner, a bullet struck an entire auto. The released air shrieked like a huge animal in agony. I rolled, flopping around, willing myself to crawl closer to the curb but unable, feeling a sudden wet warmth upon my face and seeing the safe shooting wildly into the intersection and the men rounding the corner into the dark. Pounding, gone now, as the skittering safe bounded off at a tangent, shot into the intersection and lodged into the 3rd rail and sent up a curtain of sparks that lit up the block like a blue dream. A dream as I was dreaming, and through which I could see the cops braced as on a target range, feet forward, free arms akimbo, firing with deliberate aim. "Get hold of emergency," one of them yelled, and I saw them turn and disappear, where the dull glint of trolley rails faded off into the dark. Suddenly the block leaped alive. Men who seemed to rise up out of the sidewalks were rushing into the storefronts above me, their voices rising excitedly. And now the blood was in my face and I could move, getting to my knees as someone out of the crowd was helping me to stand. "You hurt, Daddy?" "Some. I don't know. I couldn't quite see them." "Damn, he's got a hole in his head," a voice said. A light flashed in my face, came close. I felt a hard hand upon my skull and moved away. "Hell, it's just a nick," a voice said. "One of them 45s hit your little finger. You got to go down." "Well, this one over here is gone down for the last time," someone called from the walk. "They got him clean." I wiped my face, my head ringing. Something was missing. "Here, buddy, this yours?" It was my briefcase, extended to me by its handles. I seized it with sudden panic, as though something infinitely precious had almost been lost to me. "Thanks," I said, peering into their dim, blue-tinted features. I looked at the dead man. He lay face forward, the crowd working around him. I realized suddenly that it might have been me huddled there, feeling too that I had seen him there before, in the bright lights of noon, long ago. How long? Knew his name, I thought, and suddenly my knees flowed forward. I sat there, my fist that gripped the briefcase bruising against the street. My head slumped forward. They were going around me. Shout out to James Wright 214. Saw your status and can't believe someone reported you for reading a book. World's gone mad. Yeah, it might have been somebody reporting me, but it also might be that YouTube's AI system or their internal monitoring system is just trying to mark off anybody who speaks against genocide or is actively trying to voice or give voice to Palestinian resistance, right? So that's the thing. It might be haters because I got a lot of white supremacists that follow me, but it might also be just YouTube, in their algorithm. But I'm going to reread that chapter. It's chapter 25 of The Thorn in the Carnation. I'm going to reread that chapter with just the text because there's nothing wrong with reading a fictional book. Last time I checked, that's not against the terms of service, but I digress. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. "Get off my foot, man," I heard. "Quit shoving. There's plenty for everybody." There was something I had to do, and I knew that my forgetfulness wasn't real, as one knows that the forgotten details of certain dreams are not truly forgotten but evaded. I knew, and in my mind I was trying to reach through the gray veil that now seemed to hang behind my eyes as opaquely as the blue curtain that screened the street beyond the safe. The dizziness left, and I managed to stand, holding onto my briefcase, pressing a handkerchief to my head. Up the street there sounded the crashing of huge sheets of glass, and through the blue mysteriousness of the dark, the walks shimmered like shattered mirrors. All the street signs were dead. All the day's sounds had lost their stable meaning. Somewhere a burglar alarm went off, a meaningless blangy sound, followed by the joyful shouts of looters. "Come on," someone called nearby. "Let's go, buddy," the man who had helped me said. He took my arm, a thin man who carried a large cloth bag slung over his shoulder. The shape you in wouldn't do to leave you round here," he said. "You act like you drunk." "Go where?" I said. "Where? Hell, man, everywhere. We get to moving. No telling where we might go." "Hey, Dupree," he called. "Say, man, goddamn, don't be calling my name so loud," a voice answered. "Here I am over here, getting some work shirts." "Get some for me, do," he said. "All right, but don't think I'm your papa," the answer came. I looked at the thin man, feeling a surge of friendship. He didn't know me. His help was disinterested. "Hey, do," he called. We gonna do it?" "Hell yes, soon as I get me these shirts." The crowd was working in and out of the stores like ants around spilled sugar. From time to time there came the crash of glass, shots, fire trucks in distant streets. "How you feel?" the man said. "Still fuzzy," I said, "and weak." "Let's see if it's stopped bleeding." "Yeah, you'll be all right." I saw him vaguely, though his voice came clear. "Sure," I said. "Man, you lucky you ain't dead. These sons of bitches is really shooting now," he said. "Over on Lennox, they was aiming up in the air. If I could find me a rifle, I'd show 'em. Here, take you a drink of this good scotch," he said, taking a quart bottle from a hip pocket. "I got me a whole case stashed, what I got from a liquor store over there. Over there, all you got to do is breathe, and you drunk, man, drunk. 100 proof, bonded whiskey flowing all in the gutters." I took a drink, shuddering as the whiskey went down, but thankful for the shock it gave me. There was a bursting, tearing movement of people around me, dark figures in a blue glow. "Look at them take it away," he said, looking into the dark action of the crowd. "Me, I'm tired. Was you over on Lennox?" "No," I said, seeing a woman moving slowly past with a row of about a dozen dressed chickens suspended by their necks from the handle of a new straw broom. Oh, wow. People just tearing up the street. They just outside looting and the shooting starting all crazy. Pardon once again. Sorry for my sickness, man, but we putting in that work. Let's go. Hell, you ought to see it, man. Everything is tore up. By now, the women's is picking it clean. I saw one old woman with a whole side of a crow on her back. Man, she was about bent bow-legged trying to make it home. "Here come Dupree now," he said, breaking off. I saw a little hard man come out of the crowd carrying several boxes. He wore 3 hats upon his head, and several pairs of suspenders flopped about his shoulders. And now as he came toward us, I saw that he wore a pair of gleaming new rubber hip boots. His pockets bulged, and over his shoulder he carried a cloth sack that swung heavily behind him. "Damn, Dupree," my friend said, pointing to his head. "You got one of them for me? What kind is they?" Dupree stopped and looked at him. "With all them hats in there, and I'm going to come out with anything but a Dobbs? Man, are you mad? All them new pretty colored Dobbs? Come on, let's get going before the cops get back. Damn, look at that thing blaze." I looked toward the curtain of blue fire, through which vague figures toiled. Dupree called out, and several men left the crowd and joined us in the street. We moved off, my friend, Schofield, the others called him, leading me along. My head throbbed, still bled. Looks like you got you some loot too," he said, pointing to my briefcase. "Not much," I said, thinking loot, and suddenly I knew why it was heavy. remembering Mary's broken bank and the coins. And now I found myself opening the briefcase and dropping all my papers. My Brotherhood identification, the anonymous letter, along with Clifton's doll, into it. Fill it up, man. Don't you be bashful. You wait till we tackle one of these pawn shops. That dude's got him a cotton-picking sack full of stuff. He could go into business. Well, I'll be damned, a man on the other side of me said. I thought that was a cotton sack. Where'd he get that thing? He brought it with him when he come north, Schofield said. Swears that when he goes back, he'll have it full of $10 bills. Hell, after tonight, he'll need him a warehouse for all the stuff he's got. You fill that briefcase, buddy. Get yourself something. No, I said. I've enough in it already. And now I remembered very clearly where I'd started out for, but could not leave them. Maybe you're right, Schofield said. How I know you might have it full of diamonds or something. A man oughtn't be too greedy, though it's time something like this happened. We moved along. Should I leave? Get on the district? Where were they at the birthday celebration? How did all this get started? I said. Schofield seemed surprised. Damn if I know, man. A cop shot a woman or something. Another man moved close to us as somewhere a piece of heavy steel rang down. Hell, that wasn't what started it, he said. It was that fellow. What's his name? Who? I said. What's his name? That young guy? You know, everybody's mad about it. Clifton, I thought. It's for Clifton. A night for Clifton. Oh, man, don't tell me, Schofield said. Didn't I see it with my own eyes? About 8 o'clock down on Lenox and 123rd, this Patty slapped the kid for grabbing a Baby Ruth, and the kid's mama took it up. And then the Patty slapped her, and that's when all hell broke loose. You were there, I said. Same's I'm here. Some fellow said the kid made the Patty mad by grabbing a candy named after a white woman. Damn if that's the way I heard it, another man said. When I come up, they said a white woman set it off by trying to take a black gal's man. Damn who started it, Dupree said. All I want is for it to last a while. It was a white gal, all right, but that wasn't the way it was. She was drunk, another voice said. But it couldn't have been Sybil, I thought. It had already started. You want to know who started it? A man holding a pair of binoculars called from the window of a pawn shop. You want really to know? Sure, I said. Well, you don't need to go no further. It was started by that great leader, Ras the Destroyer. That monkey chaser, someone said. Listen, bastard, don't nobody know how it started, Dupree said. Somebody has to know, I said. Schofield held his whiskey toward me. I refused it. Hell, man, it just exploded. These is dog days, he said. Dog days. Show, this hot weather. I tell you, they mad over what happened to that young fellow. What's his name? We were passing a building now, and I heard a voice calling frantically. Colored store, colored store. Then put up a sign, Mother Fowler, a voice said. You probably rotten as the others. Listen at the bastard. For one time in his life, he's glad to be colored, Schofield said. Colored store, the voice went on automatically. Hey, you sure you ain't got some white blood? No, sir, the voice said. Should I bust him, man? For what? He ain't got a damn thing. Let the Mother Fowler alone. A few doors away, we came to a hardware store. This is the first stop, men, Dupree said. What happens now, I said. Who you, he said, cocking his thrice-hatted head. Nobody, just one of the boys, I began. You sure you ain't somebody I know? I'm pretty sure, I said. He's all right, dude, said Schofield. Them cops shot him. Dupree looked at me and kicked something, a pound of butter, sending it smearing across the hot street. We fixing to do something what needs to be done, he said. First we gets a flashlight for everybody. And let's have some organization, y'all. Don't everybody be running over everybody else. Come on. Come on in, buddy, Schofield said. I felt no need to lead or leave them, was glad to follow, was gripped by a need to see where and what they would lead. And all the time the thought that I should go to the district was with me. We went inside the store, into the dark glinting with metal. They moved carefully, and I could hear them searching, sweeping objects to the floor. The cash register rang. Here's some flashlights over here, someone called. How many? Dupree said. Plenty, man. Okay, pass out one to everybody. They got batteries? Nah, but there's plenty them too. About a dozen boxes. Okay, give me one with batteries so I can find the buckets. Then every man get him a light. Here's some buckets over here, Schofield said. Then all we got to find is where he keeps the oil. Oil, I said. Coal oil, man. And hey, y'all, he called. Don't nobody be smoking in here. I stood beside Schofield listening to the noise as he took a stack of zinc buckets and passed them out. Now the store leaped alive with flashing lights and flickering shadows. Keep them lights down on the door, Dupree called. No use letting folks see who we are. Now when we get your buckets, line up and let me fill 'em. Listen to old dude lay it down. He's a bitch, ain't he, buddy? He always liked to lead things, and always leading me into trouble. What are we getting ready to do, I said. You'll see, Dupree said. Hey, you over here. Hey, you over there. Come on from behind the counter and take this bucket. Don't you see ain't nothing in that cash register? That if it was, I'd have it myself? Suddenly the banging of buckets ceased. We moved into the back room. By the light of a flash, I could see a row of fuel drums mounted on racks. Dupree stood before them in his new hip boots and filled each bucket with oil. We moved in slow order. Our buckets filled. We filed out into the street. I stood there in the dark, feeling a rising excitement as their voices played around me. What was the meaning of it all? What should I think of it? Do about it? With this stuff, Dupree said, we better walk in the middle of the street. It's just down around the corner. Then as we moved off, a group of boys ran among us, and the men started using their lights, revealing darting figures in blonde wigs, the tails of their stolen dress coats flying. Behind them in hot pursuit came a gang armed with dummy rifles taken from an Army and Navy store. I laughed with the others, thinking, a holy holiday for Clifton. That's hilarious. The black boys looted the store. They're running around with blonde wigs. The streets of Harlem are on fire, and everybody's just looting, man. What's that Dr. Dre song, The Day the Niggas Took Over? Yeah, that's what this is. All right. Pardon. Sorry. Ooh. All right, let's go here. Put out them lights, Dupree commanded. Behind us came the sound of screams, laughter ahead, the footfalls of the running boys, distant fire trucks, shooting, and in the quiet intervals, the steady filtering of shattered glass. I could smell the kerosene as it sloshed from the buckets and slapped against the street. Suddenly, Schofield grabbed my arm. Good God, look yonder. And I saw a crowd of men running up, pulling a Borden's milk wagon, on top of which, surrounded by a row of railroad flares, a huge woman in a gingham pinafore sat drinking beer from a barrel which sat before her. The men would run furiously a few paces and stop, resting between the shafts, run a few paces and rest, shouting and laughing, and drinking from a jug, as she on top threw back her head and shouted passionately in a full-throated voice of blues singer timbre. If it hadn't been for the referee, Joe Louis would have killed Jim Jeffery. Free beer, sloshing the dipper of beer around. We stepped aside, amazed, as she bowed graciously from side to side like a tipsy fat lady in a circus parade, the dipper like a gravy spoon in her enormous hand. Then she laughed and drank deeply while reaching over nonchalantly with her free hand to send quart after quart of milk crashing into the street. And all the time the men running with the wagon over the debris. Around me there were shouts of laughter and disapproval. Pardon, once again. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. All right. Somebody better stop them fools, Schofield said in outrage. That's what I call taking things too far. Goddamn, how the hell are they going to get her down from there after she gets full of beer? Somebody answer me that. How are they going to get her down? Round here throwing away all that good milk. The big woman left me unnerved. Milk and beer. I felt sad, watching the wagon careen dangerously as they went around a corner. We went on, avoiding the broken bottles, as now the spilling kerosene splashed into the pale, spilt milk. How much has happened? Why was I torn? We moved around a corner. My head still ached. Schofield touched my arm. Here we is, he said. We had come to a huge tenement building. Where are we? I said. This is the place where most of us live, he said. Come on. So that was it, the meaning of the kerosene. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe they had the nerve. All the windows seemed empty. They'd blacked it out themselves. I saw now only by flash or flame. Where will you live? I said, looking up. You call this living? Schofield said. It's the only way to get rid of it, man. I looked for hesitation in their vague forms. They stood looking at the building rising above us, the liquid dark of the oil simmering dully in the stray flecks of light that struck their pails, bent forward, their shoulders bowed. None said no by word or stance, and in the dark windows and on the roofs above I could now discern the forms of women and children. Dupree moved toward the building. Now, look here, y'all, he said, his triple-hatted head showing grotesquely atop the stoop. I want all the women and chillin' and the old and the sick folks brought out. And when you takes your buckets up the stairs, I want you to go clean to the top. I mean the top. And when you get there, I want you to start using your flashlights in every room to make sure nobody gets left behind. Then when you get them out, start splashing coal oil. Then when you get it splashed, I'm going to holler. And when I holler 3 times, I want you to light the matches and get. After that, it's every tub on its own black bottom. It didn't occur to me to interfere or to question. They had a plan. Already, I could see the women and children coming down the steps. A child was crying, and suddenly everyone paused, turning, looking off into the dark. Somewhere nearby, an incongruous sound shook the dark, an air hammer pounding like a machine gun. They paused with the sensitivity of a grazing deer, then returned to their work, the women and children once more moving. That's right, y'all. You ladies move on up the street to the folks you going to stay with, Dupree said, and keep holt them kids. Someone pounded my back and I swung around, seeing a woman push past me and climb up to catch Dupree's arm, their 2 figures seeming to blend as her voice arose thin, vibrant and desperate. Please, Dupree, she said. Please, you know my time's almost here. You know it is. If you do it now, where am I going to go? Dupree pulled away and rose to a higher step. He looked down at her, shaking his thrice-hatted head. Now get on out the way, Lottie, he said patiently. Why you have to start this now? We done been all over it, and you know I ain't gonna change. And listen here, the rest of y'all, he said, reaching into the top of his hip boot and producing a nickel-plated revolver and waving it around. Don't think there's going to be any mind-changing either, and I don't aim for no arguments neither. You goddamn right, Dupree. We with you. My kid died from the TBs in that death trap, but I bet a man ain't no more gonna be born in there, he said. So now, Lottie, you go on up the street and let us men's get going. Okay, this man Dupree is a real revolutionary, because this is what real revolution looks like. For us to be free, we have to end this world. We have to keep it real. And I know that's a scary thought, but it's not that millions have to die. It's not that there has to be massive destruction. But we got to start. We have to end this world as we know it. And Dupree is like, listen, old lady, I'm sorry, you're gonna lose your house. And I wouldn't like to be that old lady losing their house. And hopefully I get to be old. And hopefully I'm not old when the revolution happens. But if it does, and they need to burn down my house for this world to be built anew, then I just got to take it. You know what I mean? Because that is what needs to happen. You can fill in between the lines, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. This world has to be brought asunder in flames for us to have something new. Anyway, all right, so she stood back, crying. I looked at her in house shoes, her breasts turgid, her belly heavy and high. In the crowd, women's hands took her away. Her large liquid eyes turned for a second toward the man in the rubber boots. What type of man is he? What would Jack say of him? Jack. And where was he in this? Let's go, buddy, Schofield said, nudging me. I followed him, filled with the sense of Jack's outrageous unreality. We went in, up the stairs, flashing our lights. Ahead I saw Dupree moving. He was a type of man nothing in my life had taught me to see, to understand or respect. A man outside the scheme till now. We entered rooms littered with the signs of swift emptying. It was hot, close. This here is my own apartment, Schofield said, and ain't the bed bugs going to get a surprise. We slopped the kerosene about upon an old mattress along the floor, then moved into the hall using the flashlights. From all through the building came the sounds of footsteps, of splashing oil, the occasional prayerful protest of some old one being forced to leave. The men worked in silence now, like moles deep in the earth. Time seemed to hold. No one laughed. Then from below came Dupree's voice. Okay, mens, we've got everybody out. Now, starting with the top floor, I want you to start striking matches. Be careful and don't set yourself on fire. There was still some kerosene left in Schofield's bucket, and I saw him pick up a rag and drop it. Then came the sputtering of a match, and I saw the room leap to flame. The heat flared up, and I backed away. He stood there silhouetted against the red flare, looking into the flames, shouting, "God damn you rotten sons of bitches. You didn't think I'd do it, but there it is. You wouldn't fix it up. Now see how you like it. Let's go," I said. Pardon everybody. Sorry. Okay. All right. Let's go, I said. Below us, men shot downstairs, 5 and 6 steps at a time, moving in the weird light of flash and flame in long dream bounds. On each floor as I passed, smoke and flame arose, and now I was seized with a fierce sense of exaltation. They've done it, I thought. They organized it and carried it through alone. The decision their own and their own action, capable of their own action. There came a thunder of footfalls above me. Someone calling, "Keep going, man. It's hell upstairs." Somebody done opened the door to the roof, and them flames is leaping. "Come on," Schofield said. I moved, feeling something slip, and was halfway down the next flight before realizing that my briefcase was gone. For a second I hesitated, but I'd had it too long to leave it now. "Come on, buddy," Schofield called. "We can't be fooling around." In a second, I said. Men were shooting past. I bent over, holding on to the handrail and shouldering my way back up the stairs, using my flash along each step. Back slowly, finding it, an oily footstep embedded with crushed pieces of plaster showing upon its leather side. Getting it now and turning to bound down again. The oil won't come off easily, I thought with a pang, but this was it. What I had known was coming around the dark corner of my mind, had known and tried to tell the committee, and which they had ignored. I plunged down, shaking with fierce excitement. At the landing, I saw a bucket half full of kerosene and seized it, flinging it impulsively into a burning room. A huge puff of smoke, fringed flame, filled the doorway, licking outward toward me. I ran, choking and coughing as I plunged. They did it themselves, I thought, holding my breath. Planned it, organized it, applied the flame. I burst into the air in the exploding sounds of the night, and I did not know if the voice was that of a man, woman, or child. But for a moment I stood on the stoop with the red doorway behind me and heard the voice call me by my Brotherhood name. It was as though I had been aroused from sleep, and for an instant I stood there looking, listening to the voice, almost lost in the clamor of shouts, screams, burglar alarms, and sirens. "Brother, ain't it wonderful," it called. "You said you would lead us. You really said it." I went down the street, going slowly but filled with a feverish inner need to be away from that voice. Where had Schofield gone? Most of their eyes, white in the flame-flushed dark, looked toward the building. But now I heard someone say, "Woman, who you say that is?" And she proudly repeated my name. "Where he go? Get him, man. Ross want him." I went into the crowd, walking slowly, smoothly into the dark crowd, the whole surface of my skin alert, my back chilled, looking, listening to those moving, with a heaving and sweating, and a burr of talk around me, and aware that now that I wanted to see them, needed to see them, I could not. Feeling them, a dark mass in motion on a dark night, a black river ripping through a black land, and Ras or Tarp could move beside me, and I wouldn't know. I was one with the mass, moving down the littered street, over the paddles of oil and milk, my personality blasted. Then I was in the next block, dodging in and out, hearing them somewhere in the crowd behind me, moving on through the sound of sirens and burglar alarms to be swept into a swifter crowd and pushed along, half running, half walking, trying to see behind me and wondering where the others had gone. There was shooting back there now. They were shooting back there now, and on either side of me they were throwing garbage cans, bricks, and pieces of metal into plate glass windows. I moved, feeling as though a huge force was on the point of bursting. Shouldering my way to the side, I stood in a doorway and watched them move, feeling a certain vindication as now I thought of the message that had brought me here. Who had called? One of the district members or someone from Jack's birthday celebration? Who wanted me at the district after it was too late? Very well, I'd go there now. I'd see what the masterminds thought now. Where were they anyway, and what profound conclusions were they drawing? What ex post facto lessons of history? At that crash over the telephone, had that been the beginning, or had Jack simply dropped his eye? Ha! I laughed drunkenly, the eruption paining my head. Suddenly the shooting ceased, and in the silence there was the sound of voices, footfalls, labor. "Hey, buddy," somebody said beside me. "Where are you going?" It was Schofield. "It's either run or get knocked down," I said. "I thought you were still back there." I'd cut out, man. A building 2 doors away started to burn, and they had to get the fire department. Damn, wasn't for this noise, I'd swear those bullets was mosquitoes. "Watch out," I warned, pulling him away from where a man lay propped against a post, tightening a tourniquet around his gashed arm. Schofield flashed his light, and for a second I saw the black man, his face gray with shock, watching the jetting pulsing of his blood spurting into the street. Then, compelled, I reached down and twisted the tourniquet, feeling the blood warm upon my hand, seeing the pulsing cease. "You done stopped it," a young man said, looking down. "Here," I said, "you take it. Hold it tight. Get him to a doctor." "Ain't you a doctor?" "Me," I said. "Me? Are you crazy? If you want him to live, get him away from here." Albert done gone for one, the boy said, "but I thought you was one." "You?" "No," I said, looking at my bloody hands. "No, not me. You hold it tight until the doctor comes. I couldn't cure a headache." I stood, wiping my hands against the briefcase, looking down at the big man, his back resting against the post with his eyes closed. The boy holding desperately to the tourniquet made of what had been a bright new tie. "Come on," I said. "Say," Schofield said when we were past, "wasn't that you that woman was calling brother back yonder?" "Brother? No, it must have been some other guy." "You know, man, I think I seen you before somewhere. You ever was in Memphis?" "Say, look what's coming," he said, pointing, and I looked through the dark to see a squad of white-helmeted policemen charge forward and break for shelter as a rain of bricks showered down from the building tops. Some of the white helmets, racing for the doorways, turned to fire, and I heard Schofield grunt and go down, and I dropped beside him, seeing the red burst of fire and hearing the shrill scream, like an arching dive, curving from above to end in a crunching thud in the street. It was as though it landed in my stomach, sickening me, and I crouched, looking down past Schofield, who lay just ahead of me, to see the dark crushed form from the roof, and farther away the body of a cop, his helmet making a small white luminous mound in the dark. I moved now to see whether Schofield was hit, just as he squirmed around and cursed at the cops, who were trying to rescue the one who was down, his voice furious, as he stretched full length, firing away with a nickel-plated pistol like that Dupree had waved. "Get the hell down, man," he yelled over his shoulder. "I've been wanting to blast him a long time." "No, not with that thing," I said. "Let's get out of here." "Hell, man, I can shoot this thing," he said. I rolled behind a pile of baskets filled with rotting chickens now, and to my left, upon the littered curb, a woman and man crouched behind an upturned delivery cart. "De Hart," she said. Let's get up on the hill. De Hart. Up with the respectable people." Hell. We stay right here," the man said. "This thing's just starting. If it becomes a show-enough race riot, I want to be here when there'll be some fighting back." The words struck like bullets fired close range, blasting my satisfaction to earth. It was as though the uttered word had given meaning to the night, almost as though it had created it, brought it into being in the instant his breath vibrated small against the loud, riotous air. And in defining and giving organization to the fury, it seemed to spin me around, and in my mind I was looking backward over the days since Clifton's death. Could this be the answer? Could this be what the community had planned? The answer to why they'd surrendered our influence to Ross? Suddenly, I heard the hoarse explosion of a shotgun and looked past Schofield's glinting pistol to the huddled form from the roof. It was suicide. Without guns, it was suicide. And not even the pawn shops here had guns for sale. And yet I knew, with a shattering dread, that the uproar, which for the moment marked primarily the crash of men against things, against stores, markets, could swiftly become the crash of men against men, and with most of the guns and numbers on the other side. I could see it now, see it clearly, and in growing magnitude. It was not suicide, but murder. The committee had planned it, and I had helped, had been a tool, not a fool. A tool just at the very moment I had thought myself free. By pretending to agree, I had indeed agreed, had made myself responsible for that huddled form lighted by flame, and gunfire in the street, and all the others whom now the night was making ripe for death. The briefcase swung heavy against my leg as I ran, going away, leaving Schofield cursing his lack of bullets behind me, running wildly and swinging the briefcase hard against the head of a dog that leaped at me out of the crowd, sending him yelping away. To my right lay a quiet residential street with trees, and I entered it, going towards 7th Avenue, toward the district, filled now with horror and hatred. They'll pay, I thought, they'll pay. The street lay dead quiet in the light of the late risen moon, the gunfire thin and for a moment distant. The rioting seemed in another world. For a moment I paused beneath a low, thickly leaved tree, looking down the well-kept, doily shadowed walks past the silent houses. It was as though the tenants had vanished, leaving the houses silent with all windows shaded, refugees from a rising flood. Then I heard the single footfalls coming doggedly toward me in the night, an eerie slapping sound followed by a precise and hallucinated cry. Time's flying, souls dying, the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. As though he had run for days, for years, he trotted past where I stood beneath the tree, his bare feet slapping the walk in the silence, going for a few feet and then the high, hallucinated cry beginning again. I ran into the avenue where in the light of a flaming liquor store I saw 3 old women scurrying toward me with raised skirts loaded with canned goods. I can't stop it just yet, but have mercy, Lord, one of them said. Do, Jesus, do, sweet Jesus. I moved ahead, the fumes of alcohol and burning tar in my nostrils. Down the avenue to my left, a single street lamp still glowed where the long block was intersected on my right by a street, and I could see a crowd rushing a store that faced the intersection, moving in, and a fusillade of canned goods, salami, liverwurst, hogs' heads, and chitlins belching out to those outside, and a bag of flour bursting white upon them. And now, out of the dark of the intersecting street, 2 mounted policemen came at a gallop, heaving huge and heavy hooved, charging straight into the swarming mass. And I could see the great forward lunge of the horses and the crowd breaking and rolling back like a wave, back and screaming and cursing, and some laughing, back and around and out into the avenue, stumbling and pushing, as the horses, heads high and bits froth-flecked, went over the curb to land stiff-legged and slide over the cleared walk as upon ice skates, and passed, carried by the force of the charge, sideways now, legs stiff, sparks flying, to where another crowd looted another store, and my heart tightened as the first crowd swung imperturbably back to their looting with derisive cries, like sandpipers swinging around to glean the shore after a furious wave's recession. Cursing Jack and the Brotherhood, I moved around a steel grill torn from the front of a pawn shop, seeing the troopers galloping back and the riders lifting the horses to charge again, grim and skillful in white steel helmets, and the charge beginning. This time a man went down, and I saw a woman swinging a gleaming frying pan hard against the horse's rump, and the horse neighing and beginning to plunge. They'll pay, I thought. They'll pay. They came toward me as I ran, a crowd of men and women carrying cases of beer, cheese, chains of linked sausages, watermelons, sacks of sugar, hams, cornmeal, fuel lamps. If only it could stop right here, here, Here before the others came with their guns, I ran. There was no firing, but when I thought, how long before it starts? Get a side of bacon, Joe, a woman called. Get a side of bacon, Joe. Get Wilson's. Lord, 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 a dark voice called from the dark. I went on, plunged in a sense of painful isolation, as I reached 125th Street and started east. A squad of mounted police galloped past. Men with submachine guns were guarding a bank and a large jewelry store. I moved out to the center of the street, running down the trolley rails. The moon was high now, and before me the shattered glass glittered in the street like the water of a flooded river, upon the surface of which I ran as in a dream, avoiding by fate alone the distorted objects washed away by the flood. Then suddenly I seemed to sink, sucked under. Ahead of me the body hung, white, naked, and horribly feminine from a lamp post. I felt myself spin around with horror, and it was as though I had turned some nightmarish somersault. I whirled, still moving by reflex, backtracking and stopped, and now there was another and another, 7 all hanging before a gutted storefront. I stumbled, hearing the cracking of bones underfoot, and saw a physician's skeleton shattered on the street, the skull rolling away from the backbone. As I steadied long enough to notice the unnatural stiffness of those hanging above me. They were mannequins. Okay, I thought they were starting lynching white people. I was like, okay, did they have some dead white folks hanging from telephone poles? That would have been crazy. That would have been crazy. They were mannequins, dummies, I said aloud, hairless, bald, and sterilely feminine. And I recalled the boys in the blonde wigs, expecting the relief of laughter, but suddenly was more devastated by the humor than by the horror. But are they unreal, I thought? Are they? What if one, even one, is real? Is Sybil? I hugged my briefcase, backing away, and ran. They moved in a tight-knit order, carrying sticks and clubs, shotguns and rifles, led by Ras the Exhorter, become Ras the Destroyer, upon a great black horse. A new Ras of a haughty, vulgar dignity, dressed in the costume of an Abyssinian chieftain, a fur cap upon his head, his arm bearing a shield, a cape made of the skin of some wild animal around his shoulders, a figure more out of a dream than out of Harlem, than out of even this Harlem night, yet real, alive, alarming. Come away from that stupid looting, he called to a group before a store. Come join with us to burst in the armory and get guns and ammunition. And hearing his voice, I opened my briefcase and searched for my dark glasses, my Reinhardts, drawing them out only to see the crushed lenses fall to the street. Reinhardt, I thought, Reinhardt. I turned. The police were back there behind me. If shooting started, I'd be caught in the crossfire. I felt in my briefcase, feeling papers, shattered iron, coins, my fingers closing over Tarp's leg chain, and I slipped it over my knuckles, trying to think. I closed the flap, locking it. A new mood was settling over me as they came on, a larger crowd than Ras had ever drawn. I went calmly forward, holding the heavy case, but moving with a certain new sense of self, and with it a feeling almost of relief, almost of a sigh. I knew suddenly what I had to do, knew it even before it shaped itself completely in my mind. Someone called, "Look!" And Ras bent down from the horse, saw me, and flung, of all things, a spear. And I fell forward at the movement of his arm, catching myself upon my hands as a tumbler would, and heard the shock of it piercing one of the hanging dummies. I stood, my briefcase coming with me. "Betrayer," Ras shouted. "It's the brothers," someone said. They moved up around the horse, excited and not quite decided. And I faced him, knowing I was no worse than he, nor any better, and that all the months of illusion and the nights of chaos required but a few simple words, a mild, even a meek, muted action to clear the air, to awaken them and me. "I am no longer their brother," I shouted. "They want a race riot and I am against it. The more of us who are killed, the better they like." "Ignore his lying tongue," Ras shouted. "Hang him up to teach the black people a lesson, and there be no more traitors, no more Uncle Toms. Hang him up there with them blasted dummies." "But anyone can see it," I shouted. It's true. I was betrayed by those who I thought were our friends, but they counted on this man too. They needed this destroyer to do their work. They deserted you so that in your despair you'd follow this man to your destruction. Can't you see it? They want you guilty of your own murder, your own sacrifice. Grab him, Rash shouted. 3 men stepped forward, and I reached up without thinking, actually a desperate oratorical gesture of disagreement and defiance, as I shouted, no. But my hand struck the spear, and I wrenched it free, gripping it mid-shaft, point forward. They want this to happen, I said. They planned it. They want the mobs to come uptown with machine guns and rifles. They want the streets to flow with blood, your blood, black blood and white blood, so that they can turn your death and sorrow and defeat into propaganda. It's simple. You've known it a long time. It goes. Use a hard R to catch a hard R. I can't say it on YouTube. Well, they used me to catch you, and now they're using Ras to do away with me and to prepare your sacrifice. Don't you see it? Isn't it clear? Hang the lying traitor, Ras shouted. What are you waiting for? I saw a group of men start forward. Okay, here's where things are getting really tense. Low-key, I really wanted Brother Jack to die. If there's one character I want killed in this story, it's not even Dr. Bledsoe, really. I wanted Brother Jack to get killed, but I guess that's not going to happen as we near the end. Sad. Anyway, I saw a group of men start forward. Wait, I said, then kill me for myself, for my own mistake. Then leave it there. Don't kill me for those who are downtown laughing at the trick they played. But even as I spoke, I knew it was no good. I had no words and no eloquence, and when Ras thundered, hang him, I stood there facing them, and it seemed unreal. I faced them knowing that the madman in a foreign costume was real, and yet unreal, knowing that he wanted my life, that he held me responsible for all the nights and days, and all the suffering, and for all that which I was incapable of controlling. And I no hero, but short and dark, with only a certain eloquence and a bottomless capacity for being a fool to mark me from the rest. Saw them, recognized them at last as those whom I had failed and of whom I was now, just now, a leader, though leading them, running ahead of them, only in the stripping away of my illusionment. I looked at Ras on his horse and at their handful of guns, and recognized the absurdity of the whole night, and of the simple yet confoundingly complex arrangement of hope and desire, fear and hate, that had brought me here still running, and knowing now who I was and where I was, and knowing too that I had no longer to run for or from the Jacks and the Emersons and the Blood, only from their confusion, impatience, and refusal to recognize the beautiful absurdity of their American identity and mine. I stood there, knowing that by dying, that by being hanged by Ross on this street in this destructive night, I would perhaps move them one fraction of a bloody step closer to a definition of who they were and of what I was and had been. But the definition would have been too narrow. I was invisible, and hanging would not bring me to visibility, even to their eyes, since they wanted my death not for myself alone, but for the chase I'd been on all my life. Because of the way I'd been run, chased, operated, purged, although to a great extent I could have done nothing else, given their blindness. Didn't they tolerate both Reinhardt and Bledsoe, and my invisibility? And that I, a little black man with an assumed name, should die because a big black man and his hatred and confusion over the nature of reality that seemed controlled solely by white men, whom I knew to be as blind as he, was just too much, too outrageously absurd. And I knew that it was better to live out one's own absurdity than to die for that of others, whether for Ras's or Jack's. So when Ras yelled, hang him, I let fly the spear, and it was as though for a moment I had surrendered my life and begun to live again, watching it catch him as he turned his head to shout, ripping through both cheeks, and saw the surprised pause of the crowd as Ras wrestled with the spear that locked his jaws. Damn, he threw a spear at Ras, and it hit him in the face. Damn, that's crazy. Okay, some of the men raised their guns, but they were too close to shoot, and I hit the first with Tarp's leg chain and the other in the middle with my briefcase. Then ran through a looted store, hearing the blanging of the burglar alarms as I scrambled over scattered shoes, upturned showcases, chairs, back to where I saw the moonlight through the rear door ahead. They came behind me like a draft of flames, and I led them through and around to the avenue. And if they'd fired, they could have had me, but it was important to them that they hang me, lynch me even, since this was the way they ran, had been taught to run. I should die by hanging alone, as though only hanging would settle things, even the score. So I ran expecting death between the shoulder blades or through the back of my head. And as I ran, I was trying to get to Mary's. It was not a decision of thought, but something I realized suddenly while running over puddles of milk in the back street, stopping to swing the heavy briefcase and the leg chain, slipping and sliding out of their hands. If only I could turn around and drop my arms and say, "Look, men, give me a break. We're all black folks together. Nobody cares." Though now I knew we cared. They at last cared enough to act. So I thought, if only I could say, "Look, they've played a trick on us. The same old trick with new variations. Let's stop running and respect and love one another." If only, I thought, running into another crowd now and thinking I'd gotten away, only to catch a punch on my jaw as one closed in shouting, and feeling the leg chain bounce as I caught his head and spurted forward, turning out of the avenue, only to be struck by a spray of water that seemed to descend from above. It was a mane that had burst, throwing a fierce curtain of spray into the night. I was going for Mary's, but I was moving downtown through the dripping street rather than up, and as I started through, a mounted policeman charged through the spray, the horse black and dripping, charging through and looming huge and unreal, neighing and clopping across the pavement upon me now as I slipped to my knees and saw the huge pulsing bulk floating down upon and over me, the sound of hooves and screams and a rush of water coming through distantly, as though I sat remote in a padded room. Then over, almost past, the hair of the tail, a fiery lash across my eyes. I stumbled about in circles, blindly swinging the briefcase, the image of a fiery comet's tail burning my smarting lids, turning and swinging blindly with briefcase and leg chain, and hearing the gallop begin as I floundered helplessly, and now moving straight into the full, naked force of the water, feeling its power like a blow, wet and thudding and cold. Then through it, and able partly to see, just as another horse dashed up and through, a hunter taking a barrier, the rider slanting backward, the horse rising, then hit and swallowed by the rising spray. I stumbled down the street, the comet tail in my eyes, seeing a little better now, and looking back to see the water spraying like a mad geyser in the moonlight. To Mary, I thought, to Mary. One thing that I really don't like about Ellison is the way he does these action scenes. The way he describes action scenes are a bit too, I'm knocking over everything. The way he describes action scenes is a bit too verbose. The best way, or the way that works for me, or that I find most compelling when describing action in a novel, is short, terse sentences. These long, winding sentences describing action just make it confusing. But we're still following the story. He's just running through the streets of Harlem and everything's going crazy. Anyway, I really like this last chapter. It's more of like a major climax. You know what I mean? It is very long. Okay, we do have quite a few more pages until we're done. But it's about 7 pages or so until we're wrapping this up. So we're almost finished with Invisible Man. This is the last chapter of Invisible Man. So we have about 7 more pages left. We're going to do the epilogue tomorrow. I'll give my final thoughts in the book, and then we'll call it a day. Let's go. There were rows of iron fences backed by low hedges before the houses, and I stumbled behind them and lay panting to rest from the crushing force of the water. But hardly had I settled down, the dry dog-day smell of the hedge in my nose, when they stopped before the house, leaning upon the fence. They were passing a bottle around, and their voices sounded spent of strong emotion. "This is some night," one of them said. "Ain't this some night? It's about like the rest." "Why you say that?" 'Cause it's full of fucking and fighting and drinking and lying. Give me that bottle. Yeah, but tonight I seen some things I never seen before. You think you seen something? Hell, you ought to been over on Lennox about 2 months ago. You know that stud Ras the Destroyer? Well, man, he was spitting blood. That crazy guy? Hell yes, man. He had a big black house and a fur cap and some kind of old lion skin or something over his shoulder. And he was raising hell. God damn if he wasn't a sight. Riding up and down on this old horse. You know, one of the kind that pulls vegetables wagons, and he got him a cowboy saddle and some big spurs. Oh, no, man. Hell yes, riding up and down the block yelling, destroy him, drive him out, burn him out. I, Ras, commands you. You get that, man. He said, I, Ras, commands you to destroy them to get the last piece of rotten fish. And about that time, some joker with a big old Georgia voice sticks his head out the window and yells, riot him, cowboy, give him hell and bananas. And man, that crazy son of a bitch up there on that horse looking like death eating a sandwich, he reaches down and comes up with a 45 and starts blasting up that window. And man, talk about cutting out. In a second, wasn't nobody left but old Ras up there on that horse with that lion skin stretched straight out behind him. Crazy, man. Everybody else trying to get some loot and him and his boys out for blood. I lay like a man rescued from drowning, listening, still not sure I was alive. I was over there, another voice said. You see him when the mounted police got after his ass? Hell yeah. Here, take a little taste. Well, that's when you should have seen him. When he seen them cops riding up, he reached back of his saddle and come up with some kind of old shield. A shield? Hell yes, one with a spike in the middle of it. And that ain't all. When he sees the cops, he calls to one of his goddamn henchmen to hand him up a spear. And a little short guy run out of the street and give him one. You know, one of the kind you see them African guys carrying in the movie pictures. Where the hell was you, man? I'm over on the side where some stud done broke in a store and is selling cold beer out the window. Done gone into business, man. The voice laughed. I was drinking me some Budweiser and digging the doings when here comes the cops up the street, riding like cowboys, man. And when old Ross the what's-his-name sees him, he lets out a roar like a lion and rears back and starts shooting spurs into the boss's ass fast as nickels falling into the subway at going home time. And goddamn, that's when you ought to seen him. Say, give me a taste there, fella. Thanks. Here comes Bookity with that spear stuck out in front of him and that shield on his arm. Charging, man. And he's yelling something in African or West Indian or something. And he's got his head down low like he knew about that shit too, man. Riding like Earl Sandy at Jamaica. The old black horse let out a whinny and he got his head down. I don't know where he got that son of a bitch. But gentlemen's, I swear, when he felt that steel in his high behind, he came on like man of war, going to get his ashes hauled. Before the cops knowed what hit him, Ras is right in the middle of him, and one cop grabbed for that spear, and old Ras swung round and bust him across the head, and the cop goes down, and his horse rears up, and old Ras tries to spear him another cop. And the other horses is plunging around and old Ras tries to spear him still another cop. Only he's too close and the horse is pulling and snorting and pissing and shitting. And they swings around and the cop is swinging his pistol. And every time he swings, old Ras throws up his shield with one arm and chops at him with spears with the other. And man, you could hear that gun striking that old shield like somebody dropping tire irons out a 12-story window. And you know what? When old Ross saw he was too close to spear him a cop, he wheeled that horse around and rode off a bit and did him a quick roundabout face and charged him again. Out for blood, man. Only this time the cop got tired of that bullshit and one of them started shooting. And that was the lick. Old Ross didn't have time to get his gun, so he let fly with that spear, and you could hear him grunt and say something about that cops kinfolks, and then him and that horse shot up the street, leaping like Hygo, the goddamn silver. Man, where'd you come from? It's the truth, man. Here's my right hand. They were laughing outside the hedge and leaving, and I lay in a cramp, wanting to laugh and yet knowing that Ras was not funny, or not only funny, but dangerous as well, wrong but justified, crazy and yet coldly sane. Why did they make it seem funny? Only funny, I thought, and yet knowing that it was. It was funny and dangerous and sad. Jack had seen it or had stumbled upon it and used it to prepare a sacrifice, and I had been used as a tool. My grandfather had been wrong about yesing them to death and destruction, or else things had changed too much since his day. There was only one way to destroy them. I got up from behind the hedge in the waning moon, wet and shaken in the hot air, and started out looking for Jack. Still turned around in my direction, I moved into the street, listening to the distant sounds of the riot and seeing in my mind the image of two eyes in the bottom of a shattered glass. I kept to the darker side of streets and to the silent areas, thinking that if he wished really to hide his strategy, he'd appear in the district, with a sound truck perhaps, playing the friendly advisor with Restrum and Tobit beside him. They were in civilian clothes, and I thought, cops, until I saw the baseball hat and started to turn, hearing, "Hey, you." I hesitated. "What's in that briefcase?" they said, and if they'd asked me anything else, I might have stood still. But at that question, a wave of shame and outrage shook me, and I ran, still heading for Jack. But I was in strange territory now, and someone, for some reason, had removed the manhole cover, and I felt myself plunge down, a long drop that ended upon a load of coal that sent up a cloud of dust. And I lay in the black dark upon the black coal, no longer running, hiding or concerned, hearing the shifting of the coal, as from somewhere above their voices came floating down. "You see the way he went down? Zoom! I was just fixing to slug the bastard. You hit him? I don't know. Say, Joe, you think the bastard's dead? Maybe. He sure is in the dark, though. You can't even see his eyes. N-word in the coal pile, eh, Joe?" Someone hollered down the hole, "Hey, black boy, come on out. We want to see what's in that briefcase." "Come down and get me," I said. "What's in that briefcase?" "You," I said, suddenly laughing. "What do you think of that?" "Me? All of you," I said. "You're crazy," he said, "but I still have you in this briefcase." What'd you steal?" "Can't you see?" I said. "Light a match." "What the hell's he talking about, Joe?" "Strike a match. The boogie's nuts." High above, I saw the small flames sputter into light. They stood, heads down, as in prayer, unable to see me back in the coal. "Come on down," I said. "Ha ha, I've had you in my briefcase all this time, and you didn't know me then, and you can't see me now." Wow. Okay. All right. "You son of a bitch," one of them called, outraged. Then the match went out, and I heard something fall softly upon the coal nearby. They were talking above. "You goddamn black hard R son of a bitch," someone called. "See how you like this." And I heard the cover settle over the manhole with a dull clang. Fine bits of dirt showered down as they stamped upon the lid, and for a moment I sent coal sliding in wild surprise. I looking up through a black space to where for a second the dim light of a match sank through a circle of holes in the steel. Then I thought, this is the way it's always been, only now I know it, and rested back, calm now, placing the briefcase beneath my head. I could open it in the morning, push off the lid. Now I was tired too, my mind retreating, the image of the two glass eyes running together like blobs of melting lead. Here it was as though the riot was gone, and I felt the tug of sleep seemed to move out upon black water. It's a kind of death without hanging, I thought, a death alive. In the morning I'll remove the lid. Mary, I should have gone to Mary's. I would go now to Mary's in the only way I could. I moved off over the black water, floating, sighing, sleeping invisibly. But I was never to reach Mary's, and I was over-optimistic about removing the steel cap in the morning. Great invisible waves of time flowed over me, but that morning never came. There was no morning nor light of any kind to awaken me, and I slept on and on until finally I was aroused by hunger. Then I was up in the dark and blundering around, feeling rough walls and the cold giving way beneath each step like treacherous sand. I tried to reach above me, but found only space, unbroken and impenetrable. Then I tried to find the usual ladder that leads out of such holes, but there was none. I had to have a light, and now on hands and knees, holding tight to my briefcase, I searched the coal until I found the folder of matches like the men had dropped. Until I found the folder of matches the men had dropped. How long ago had that been? But there were only 3, and to save them I started searching for paper to make a torch. Feeling about slowly over the coal pile, I needed just one piece of paper to light my way out of the hole, but there was nothing. Next I searched my pockets, finding not even a bill, or an advertising folder, or a Brotherhood leaflet. Why had I destroyed Reinhardt's throwaway? Well, there was only one thing to do if I was to make a torch. I'd have to open my briefcase. In it were the only papers I had. All right. I started with my high school diploma, applying one precious match with a feeling of remote irony, even smiling as I saw the swift but feeble light push back the gloom. I was in a deep basement, full of shapeless objects that extended farther than I could see, and I realized that to light my way out, I would have to burn every paper in the briefcase. I moved slowly off toward the darker blackness, lighting my way by these feeble torches. The next to go was Clifton's doll, but it burned so stubbornly that I reached inside the case for something else. Then, by the light of the smoke-sputtering doll, I opened a folded page. It was the anonymous letter, which burned so quickly that, as it flamed, I hurriedly unfolded another. It was that slip upon which Jack had written my Brotherhood name. I could still smell Emma's perfume, even in the dampness of the cellar. And now, seeing the handwriting of the 2 in the consuming flames, I burned my hand and slipped to my knees, staring. The handwriting was the same. I knelt there, stunned, watching the flames consume him. That he, or anyone at that late date, could have named me and set me running with one and the same stroke of the pen was too much. Suddenly I began to scream, getting up in the darkness and plunging wildly about, bumping against walls, scattering coal, and in my anger extinguishing my feeble light. Was the handwriting the same of the letter that said, "Hey, don't get too big for your britches, Negro boy, you better remember this is a white man's world," and the letter that Jack wrote, "Welcome to the Brotherhood, we're so glad to have you," is that the same? Okay, wow. I can see that Jack had written the Brotherhood name. I could still smell Emma's perfume even in the dampness of the cellar. And now, seeing the handwriting of the 2 in the consuming flames, I burned my hand, slipped to my knees, staring. The handwriting was the same. Yes, then by the light of the smoke-sputtering doll, I opened a folded page. It was the anonymous letter, which burned so quickly that it flamed. I hurriedly unfolded another. It was that slip upon which Jack had written my Brotherhood name. Yes, okay, so Jack had written the letter. We know Brother Jack wrote the letter, and that's why I want Brother Jack killed. Brother Jack should have died. What a hateful son of a bitch. But still whirling on in the blackness, knocking against the rough walls of a narrow passage, banging my head and cursing, I stumbled down and plunged against some kind of partition and sailed headlong, coughing and sneezing, into another dimensionless room, where I continued to roll about the floor in my outrage. How long this kept up, I do not know. It might have been days, weeks. I lost all sense of time, and every time I paused to rest, the outrage revived, and I went off again. Then finally, when I could barely move, something seemed to say, "That's enough. Don't kill yourself. You've run enough. You're through with them at last. And I collapsed, face forward, and lay there beyond the point of exhaustion, too tired to close my eyes. It was a state neither of dreaming nor of walking. It was a state neither of dreaming nor of waking, but somewhere in between, in which I was caught like True Blood's jaybird that Yellow Jackets had paralyzed in every part but his eyes. Okay, let me make sure my nose is clean. Okay, yeah. But somehow the floor had now turned to sand, and the darkness to light, and I lay the prisoner of a group consisting of Jack and old Emerson and Bledsoe and Norton and Rass and the school superintendent and a number of others whom I failed to recognize, but all of whom had run me, who now pressed around me as I lay beside a river of black water, near where an armored bridge arched sharply away to where I could not see. And I was protesting their holding me, and they were demanding that I return to them, and were annoyed with my refusal. No, I said, I'm through with all your illusions and lies. I'm through running. Not quite, Jack said above the others' angry demands, but you soon will be unless you return. Refuse and we'll free you of your illusions, all right. No, thank you. I'll free myself, I said, struggling to rise from the cutting sand. But now they came forward with a knife, holding me, and I felt the bright red pain, and they took the two bloody blobs and cast them over the bridge, and out of my anguish I saw them curve up and catch beneath the apex of the curving arch of the bridge, to hang there, dripping down through the sunlight into the dark red water. And while the others laughed, before my pain sharpened my eyes, the whole world was slowly turning red. Now you're free of illusions, Jack said, pointing to my seed wasting upon the air. How does it feel to be free of one's illusions? And I looked up through a pain so intense now that the air seemed to roar with the clanging of metal, hearing, how does it feel to be free of illusion? And now I answered, painful and empty, as I saw a glittering butterfly circle 3 times around my blood-red parts, up there beneath the bridge's high arch. But look, I said, pointing, and they looked and laughed, and suddenly, seeing their satisfied faces and understanding, I gave Bledsoe a laugh, startling them, and Jack came forward, curious. Why do you laugh, he said. Because, at a price, I now see that which I couldn't see, I said. What does he think he sees, they said. And Jack came closer, threatening, and I laughed. I'm not afraid now, I said, but if you'll look, you'll see it's not invisible. See what, they said. That there hang not only my generations wasting upon the water, and now the pain welled up, and I could no longer see them. But what? Go on, they said. But your sun, yes, and your moon. He's crazy. Your world. I knew he was a mystic idealist, Tobit said. Still, I said, there's your universe, and that drip-drop upon the water you hear is all the history you've made, all you're going to make. Now laugh, you scientists. Let's hear you laugh. And high above me now the bridge seemed to move off to where I could not see, striding like a robot, an Iron Man, whose iron legs claimed doomfully as it moved. And then I struggled up, full of sorrow and pain, shouting, no, no, we must stop him. And I awoke in the blackness. Fully awake now, I simply lay there as though paralyzed. I could think of nothing else to do. Later I would try to find my way out, but now I could only lie on the floor, reliving the dream. All their faces were so vivid that they seemed to stand before me beneath the spotlight. They were all up there somewhere, making a mess of the world. Well, let them. I was through, and in spite of the dream, I was whole. And now I realized that I couldn't return to Mary's or to any part of my old life. I could approach it only from the outside. And I had been as invisible to Mary as I had been to the Brotherhood. No, I couldn't return to Mary's or to the campus or to the Brotherhood or home. I could only move ahead or stay here, underground. So I would stay here until I was chased out. Here, at least, I could try to think things out in peace, or, if not in peace, in quiet. I would take up residence underground. The end was in the beginning. And that's the final chapter of Invisible Man. The epilogue is right here. I'm going to give my final thoughts on this book tomorrow. That last chapter is a lot to take in. It was incredible. What a wild ending. What a story, man. What an absolute banger of a story. We're going to wrap this up soon. And I want to give a shout out to James Wright for joining, Racket Reckin for joining, and everybody else who's going to watch this on the playback. Hopefully, you find this book moving and indelible as I do. And I will catch y'all tomorrow for the epilogue, which is only, like 7 pages or so. So it's going to be a very short live stream. So tomorrow's live stream is mostly going to be my thoughts and then my thoughts and the epilogue. That's pretty much it. So catch y'all tomorrow and peace.